Hello, and welcome to another edition of Coffee Talk with immigration attorney Brian D. Lerner. Lots of stuff going on in immigration today, but I thought I would talk just a few minutes about an issue which I run across with clients, with emails, with commentary all the time. Basically, I have a lot of clients that or people just inquiring. They go, "Do we really need an attorney, to do this?" Or they'll say, "Can you guarantee success? Can you guarantee I'll get the visa or that the waiver will be granted?" Well, let me start off with the guarantee, and then we'll move back to the other issues. Now, first of all, an attorney cannot legally guarantee anything. So if you go to somebody, some attorney somewhere, or somebody pretending to be an attorney, and say, "Yes, I absolutely guarantee you success on this matter. You have a beautiful case. No way you can lose." What you need to do is go, "Thank you," turn around, and walk out the door. Because number one, we don't know what's in the mind of the immigration officer or the consulate official or the naturalization officer, the immigration judge, or the appellate agency. We really don't know. And so then, I'll let the clients know, I'll go, "No, I cannot guarantee the success." But then I go on to explain that basically what happens is I know what it is that they're looking for, okay? And, put together the legal brief, declarations, affidavits, evidence, all the supporting documents, everything that's necessary to make a stronger case. So then, when they ask me that, it's interesting because I have to let them know, look, the reason that you can't guarantee success is because realistically, it's in the discretion of the officer who's making the decision, whether that officer is an immigration judge, an appellate judge, a naturalization officer, or whoever it happens to be. The discretion is within them to make the decision. So then you have to say, okay, do you, a client who wants a waiver so your husband can come in the country after being deported for 3 years type thing, do you think you have the necessary abilities to properly persuade an officer what needs to be done? And while I can tell you that whatever it is you do, you're probably an expert at, you're probably not an expert at immigration law. Okay, there are, if you were liken it to a puzzle, there's like 10,000 pieces of immigration law, of the immigration law puzzle, and you could make it the size of your house. And one little piece over in the room on the east side could affect another piece, on the lower side of the left side of your house, on the west side. And so the reality is that if you try to do these type of matters yourself, you have no idea how one little thing can affect something else, which ultimately might get it denied, might get it put in deportation, might get a fraud charge, might get misrepresentation. You just don't know. And so, when people ask me, again, can you guarantee? And of course I say no. And then they say, do I need a lawyer? Well, you don't have to, but of course it's better. Of course it is. If you get an immigration lawyer who knows what they're doing, who's an expert in the law, we can see how the relation of everything acts in relation to another piece. Now, if it's just an absolute straightforward case and there's no issues and no problems, the reality is they're not going to be walking in my door. Okay, that's the reality. So if you feel the need to even walk into an attorney's office in the first place, then chances are you need to take the advantage of it. It's kind of like insurance. What happens if you do something and you don't do it correctly, you don't do it right, and it ends up getting denied, or you end up having to appeal and wait 2-3 years, or you end up getting put in deportation. I mean, isn't it worth it to make sure that it's done right, that everything is done that can be done. And then, you know how the saying goes, a lawyer's a fool who represents himself? Well, it's the same circumstance if you are trying to submit a waiver on either your behalf or your spouse, or your parent, or your child, whatever it is. You're too emotionally involved. You're not going to see the bigger picture. A lot of times when I'm putting stuff together, some clients will go, well, why don't you put in this, that, and this, and that? And, let them know it's going to hurt their case. It's not going to make it stronger. And we're able to pull out what we need, make the legal arguments, and then, immigration law, which is, what I find interesting, a ton of immigration law is in the gray area. It means that there's no absolute right, there's no absolute wrong. It's in an area that issues occur, that there are issues, and that the officer could rule either way. So the fact that an officer, you can't guarantee the officer will approve it, means you have to use everything at your disposal to properly convince the officer to say yes. And that's why you need someone who's an expert and really knows what they're doing, knows how to make the arguments, knows how to present the packet in a manner that best shows the good stuff, minimizes the bad stuff without any misrepresentations or fraud, but still yet minimizes it. And we know where to look to get more good stuff. I can't tell you how many clients come into my office and they say, well, I can tell you what I have in my hand here is all that I possibly have to help my case, and there's nothing more that I can have. And of course, I talk to them for 5 minutes, and I find out that there's actually a lot more that they can have. There's a lot more sources that can be used. So, if you're going to essentially do an immigration petition where it's going to ultimately end up either keeping you in the country or bringing someone you love back in the country or getting some benefit, then make sure it's done professionally. Let me just give you an example of sometimes, people just absolutely don't even know there's a clue, but let me give you, or an issue, so let me give you an example. Let's say that somebody comes to the U.S. And marries their lover 15 days after getting to the U.S., applies for adjustment of status, and then comes to the office, and they say, so we just want to make sure that, the forms are right type thing. And before I even get to that, I go, okay, how did you enter the U.S.? And, they'll say, entered on a visitor visa. And I go, how long after did you get married? I go, 15 days. And I go, okay, let me tell you the biggest issue with your case. Number one, it's fraud, okay? Not only will the adjustment get denied, you will most likely get put into removal proceedings and deported. And they're in shock. I've had some people with this same issue come in and they think I'm off my rocker when I say that. But the law says, if you're going to come in on a visitor visa, you're here to visit, go to Disneyland and so forth. But if you come on a visitor visa and you get married within 30 days, it's fraud. You can't even rebut the presumption. It's 100% absolutely fraud, okay? And so there's ways I can go about fixing that. But just think what would happen if these people decided not to go to an attorney and go into the office without any clue as to what they did, how wrong it was, and the path that they should have taken. So that's one example. Let's say another example. Somebody decides they want to apply for, and I've had this happen several times. They come in, they want to apply for naturalization. They want to become a U.S. citizen. They have 0 crimes. They've physically lived in the U.S. when they should. They've paid all their taxes. There's no child support issues. Everything's fine. Well, when I inquire further, I find on some of these cases that they, in fact, were petitioned by their lawful permanent resident parent, except they were married at the time they entered the U.S. So they didn't tell the officer. Some feel they didn't really need to, or they weren't asked, whatever it was. In that case, they weren't eligible in the first place to receive lawful permanent residency. And so if they were to have gone forward and applied for naturalization, of course the officer would find out what issue I brought out, And what would happen is they not only would get denied, they'd get put in removal proceedings for sure because they never qualified to have the resident card in the first place. That doesn't mean I can't fight the removal proceedings and do what I can to win so that they get the green card back. But still, there's ways of approaching the issue that minimizes the risk and that maximizes the chance of success. And that's another thing. People will sometimes say, well, is there any risk to doing this? Well, of course there is. There's always risk to applying for something in immigration. That's the reality. But then you have to ask yourself, is there risk in doing nothing? I can't tell you how many people are just driving, they have a broken tail light, they sped, they didn't put a turn signal on, whatever it was, and boom, next thing they're in removal proceedings. I've had people who were in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was an immigration raid at work to get somebody else, and they asked for everybody's papers, and boom, they got put in removal. And same thing with where they live. There's some people in apartment complexes, wrong place, wrong time. So there are risks to doing nothing. And so if you have the ability to file something and you come to a lawyer who knows what they're doing, then yes, of course there's going to be some risk. Of course there can be no guarantee, but if you want the benefit, if you ultimately want residency or you want to get some benefit from immigration, you may as well make sure it is done in the best possible manner. So that's what my office does. That's what I do. And another thing is we can't rush things along, unless you're basically on a plane ready to be deported, in which case we can. But otherwise, if we're preparing a waiver, or an appeal or something that requires it to be done in the best argument possible, there's a certain time period of fact gathering. There's a time period of preparing all the briefs and the declarations. There's time periods in reviewing and editing and making it better. Normally I go through 2 or 3 rounds before I feel it's sufficient to go out the door. So I ask my clients to be patient and to wait until it's just right and has the best chance of success, because when you file stuff at immigration, you're by no means on an easy road. Okay, it's always an uphill battle. And so that's why, if you go somewhere and, within 3 days they put together an entire waiver and package and appeal, whatever it is, you might want to seriously consider whether the best job was done that could be done. So, if you're patient and understand the principles of what we can and can't do, then you'll be in a position where you will you'll have a better chance of success. All of the issues will be presented and in a manner that minimizes the risk, maximizes the success, and so forth. And the nice thing about immigration law, the reality, if you lose one thing, it's possible to fight on another ground. Okay, there's if you really know the law, there's all different kinds of grounds that you can go on to try to win. Okay, to try to get the officer or somebody to say yes. And a lot of it is psychology too. Sometimes officers will be on the fence. They won't know whether to say yes or no. And so I'll sometimes get a nice psychological report showing all the hardship and so forth, just to push them on the side of saying yes. So keep that in mind. If you want a consultation, give me a call or schedule one online automatically, and I'll be happy to help you. More in the coming videos.